Hi, my name is Carla Lee, and I have had the pleasure of working as a medical provider alongside Dr. Gerbig for many, many years. My early years, he was my mentor, especially with assisting with delivering babies and developing my skills through the emergency room.
Dr. Gerbig, where to start? I guess the thing I would say about Dr. Gerbig is he was kind of a MacGyver. If he didn't have the best of the best equipment, I'll be darned if he couldn't jimmy rig something and make it work, and it always worked. It was just actually quite amazing. He didn't have to have the top of the line stuff to take care of the patients. He made do with what he had, and he was good at it. So we always used to be pretty proud of him for that capability.
Hi, my name is Bonnie Jostock, and I am RN, and I was one of the probably only RNs that are still around that were actually working when Dr. Gerbig first came to Dawson back in the late 1970s. Different times back then, no computers. So we were lucky that Dr. Gerbig had a naturally built computer in his brain, because it was hard to get a situation that he wasn't really pretty comfortable with.
Hi, I'm Kelly Wente. I've worked with Dr. Gerbig for many years. I've worked in the lab, and I've worked with Dr. Gerbig alongside of him as a lab professional. And Dr. Gerbig has always been great. He's a patient advocate. He's very compassionate with his patients, and is working with him in the lab. He always liked to educate us. He would come in the lab and he'd like to look under the microscope and teach us. And he was always a very good teacher and help explain things and why he was ordering tests.
Hello, I'm Ann Jensen. I had the privilege of working with Dr. Gerbig for 19 years at the clinic, 9 of which he considered me his work wife, is how he would introduce me. We had some good times, we had some challenging times. I always knew I was in a little bit of trouble when that red vein would pop on the one side of his forehead. Then I probably knew that I had crossed my lines with him. But for the most part, we had a lot of good times.
I'm Deb Alstead, and I was a staff nurse at Johnson Memorial Hospital. And I started working in Dawson about the very same time that Dr. Gerbig came to the community. I always appreciated how smart he is and how he was able to confront any situation that arose at the hospital.
Hi, my name is Missy Struxness, and I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Gerbig for 13 years when I was clinic manager. There are so many things that I remember about Dr. Gerbig, but first of all, I want to thank you, Dr. Gerbig, for being a trusted member of Johnson Memorial Health Services for so many years. You played a huge part in our existence, and you are very well respected, and we just thank you and your family for the service that you have provided to the community.
Well, Dr. G, I just wanted to do a little reflection on working with you for over 30 years in so many different areas, like the hospital and the clinic, nursing home. Some were fun, some were kind of silly, some were just gutbusters, others were sad, but we did them together, and we took care of the Dawson community, and which I feel a tremendous privilege being just honored to work with you.
He's just a generous person. I actually would feel bad for his family for how much time he devoted to the hospital and his patients. And always, sometimes I would wonder, God, I wonder how often he actually gets to see his family, because he's with us all the time, which we think is great, but he did make a sacrifice for that. So to his family, I want to say thank you as well for sharing him, because it has been an honor to work with him all these years.
He was always there for his patients in the community. He was always here when he walked by my office. In the most recent of days, he'd always stop by and see how I was doing. He'd always tease me that I was always on my computer, and even now he's thinking about what he can do to take care of his patients.
Dr. Gerbig was always here, always here. I believe honestly some days that he did live in his office or the doctor's lounge, but one vacation every summer was tram. He loved to pedal that bike across Minnesota and see the sights. Also taking pictures. We were fortunate enough to have many of his pictures displayed throughout our clinic in the facility. Just such a talent for that.
In a day when home visits are rarely done, he was willing to go to a patient's home if it was needed and evaluate the situation. He also is our local medical director for hospice, which I had the privilege of working for. And we really appreciated the care and concern that he had for our patients on hospice.
I worked with him for a long period of time. I've got to tell you, he's probably one of the kindest, most compassionate doctors that I've ever been with, and that I never really saw him get very upset over anything. Call him in the middle of the night, he'd be right there. He might be tired and he'd write all these orders down. And then he was a doctor who would look at you, hand you the order sheet and say, look at this, do you think there's anything I missed? I'm going to tell you, there's not too many doctors that will ask a nurse to look at their orders and see if there's anything they missed.
Dr. Gerbig was also a very good teacher. He would be in procedures, and if you were helping him or you even just had a question about something, he would explain it to you fully so that you got to learn and understand really where things were going within that procedure. And that was just so very helpful and fun to learn.
So many fun things about Dr. Gerbig. One notable that I think all of us will remember is we always knew we were probably drawing the line or in trouble when we would see the little veins start to come out.
And I think everybody knows that charting was not his favorite. He loved to see the patients and care for his patients, but no, to dictate something was not his gig. To sign papers, nope. If we let him get the mail, he saved it. We had probably half of the kitchen worth of forks in his drawer. He never got those returned either. I was several days spent in his office just handing him chart after chart after chart. But no bribes. He never bribed to get out of it. He did do it, kicking and screaming, but he would do it. Black pens were his thing, and he never wanted a click pen. He always had the kind with the cap, and then he would throw the cap and stick the pen in his pocket, and we always had a nice ink mark on his white coat. So
one thing I will just tell you, that Dr. Gerbig was really good at catching flies. And he'd be sitting at the desk and the fly would be circling around, and he'd concentrate on this fly, and all of a sudden he'd go like that. So that's a non-medical thing that I learned from Dr. Gerbig.
The other thing is that you always knew when you were pushing Dr. Gerbig a little too far, because his vein on his head would start to throb a little bit, so then you would change the subject.
He didn't like to have his blood drawn. That was one thing that we'd always joke about. He would say, just draw me in the hand. I'm like, you're not a baby, we'll draw you in the arm. And he didn't like to have his blood drawn. That was always apparent, and we'd always tease him about that.
He's very unique in his interests in bike riding, gardening, hot air ballooning, and earth homes. It made him very interesting and unique.
In the clinic, we always had a little area where we could bring snacks and people would share food. Well, one day in August, it was hot and my daughter had a 4-H project that had to go to achievement days, and I didn't have time to get home, so I brought it to work, all nicely packaged and cut, and with her name and all the ingredients on it, and Dr. Gerbig ate it. So we had to go back home and try to figure out another part of this cake. He said it was good though, however, blue ribbon cake, so that was all good.
He also was gifted with the ability to take a nap, just about anywhere, anytime. And so he would be in and we would have an OB going and he would have to be coming back in the next morning, and he'd just find an empty room and he'd lay down and he'd be out. And then we just wake him up and he went right back and doing his thing.
Our transition to electronic medical records was a fun experience. Dr. Gerbig had named the icon that we would sit and wait as our documents would load, the circle of death. And I remember him having a stopwatch next to him so that he could time the waiting time to just show us how inefficient switching to electronic records was gonna be. But in the end, we all adjusted, and I am not gonna say we came to love it, but here we are.
I was supposed to deliver in Wilmer for my first baby 22 years ago, and it got to be about 10 o'clock at night and things weren't going so well, and the doctor in Wilmer told me, nope, you're too early. I was 2 weeks early and you're not ready to deliver. And about 20 after 10, I told my husband that they needed to call the hospital because if this wasn't labor, there was something wrong with the baby. And the nurses on call said, you need to come in. So we rushed across town and I climbed up on that hospital bed and they called Dr. Gerbig because he was on call. And he broke my water, and about 2 seconds later I said, well, can I push? And he said, I'm just the catcher. And about 7 minutes later, my first baby was born. And he bragged about how quick he got to the hospital because to deliver my baby. And he was so professional, and I was so nervous because it was my first baby, and I was embarrassed because I didn't want to deliver at the hospital, but he did such a good job, and he was so proud to deliver because we kind of had a little bit of a bond because my name was Kelly and his daughter was Kelly, and we always talked about our kids and where they were and what they were doing. So I was thankful for Dr. Gerbig to be so professional at the delivery of my first baby.
If you needed stitches, he was the guy to go to. He could stitch and you would not see a scar. My son had an eye injury and he gave him stitches, and you can't even find it now.
He was a real lifesaver. And so every year, my husband on the 17th of December would deliver his lifesavers around. And of course, Dr. Gerbig got those lifesavers. And when I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about, he was a lifesaver to our family, but I can't imagine the amount of families, people in his 43, 44, 45 years of working in this community, how many people he's actually been a lifesaver for.
When it's for babies or anything, he would spend the night if it was a critical patient. Like, he thought nothing of, oh, I'll just sleep in the room. You have a question, you wake me up, I'll come in and I'll take care of that patient. And he never got mad. Like, you could call him anytime, day or night. And sometimes I'm sure he thought, oh my gosh, why are you calling me about this? But he never showed that. He always took the time to explain what was going on, and just was very helpful. So there's so many things we could say about him. I don't think we have that kind of time, but I just want to say it's been an honor to work with Dr. Gerbig, and thank you to him and his family for sharing him all these years.
So thank you, Dr. Gerbig, for the lifelong commitment that you have had to your patients and to your community. We appreciate you so very much.
But in all seriousness, he deserves so many acclimates, and just really an honor to be associate with him.
I am so thankful that I have had the opportunity to work with him and call him my friend. Thank you, Dr. Gerbig, for all you've done for our Dawson community and the area communities and the way you served. Thanks again.
Again, thank you, Dr. Gerbig, for all that you've done for Johnson Memorial and the Dawson community.
When I think of Dr. Gerbig, first thing that comes to my mind is giving 100% of himself. He gave 100% of himself to this facility and to the employees and to his patients. From being here after 5 o'clock several nights, to making house calls, going to our assisted livings and our group homes, also to see those residents so they wouldn't have to come out in inclement weather. So, and compassion. Dr. Gerbig was very compassionate.
I wish you the very best, Dr. Gerbig, and I just want you to know that you've impacted my life in a manner that I can't even describe. Thank you.
I have a little poem for you too. It's called Reflections on Living Your Dreams. A beautiful bow streaking across the air, a palette of color and adventure to share, a spectrum of color strewn across the sky, breathless beauty delights the eye. Having only one life of living, a rainbow day deserves the best of your giving. To stop and pause and survey life's beauty, your travels become a joyous duty. Each water droplet reflects light, each of us special in the Maker's sight. So, wet your palette and paint the day. You may never know what will come your way. Reds and yellows, mix 'em up, try being bold. A masterpiece adventure is being told. You're the color strewn across the sky. You're the connection to this moment and reason why. I've learned from the best to travel, be bold, living life and look for the tale untold. Head out the door of your safety zone. Adventure can be near or far away from home. So you turn to remember as the sun is setting, to live and laugh and to love, never forgetting. It's not about the arriving, it's all about the adventure. You're the maker of your rainbow, a painter of your eternal tenature. Thank you, Dr. Gerbig, so much. Reflections from Lori Pearson on life and dreams, and all the best to you